Essential elements of leadership development. Everything in life is about knowing what you want and getting what you want. Knowing what you want is making decisions, and getting what you want is negotiating. If you do not update your knowledge in these two areas, you will miss out on many things in life.
These days, everyone speaks of leadership development. Leadership has become a catch-all term. It can mean different things to different people. However, I can state quite emphatically that a leader must be able to A, make good decisions, and B, communicate and convince the team to execute it, that is to negotiate. Because every action is a decision and every interaction is a negotiation. What we present here is applicable in your personal life as well. My steadfast belief that we have serious problems when making decisions is supported by two independent surveys. First, in a recent McKinsey survey of over 2,000 executives, only 28% said that the quality of decisions were really good. 60% thought that bad decisions were as frequent as good ones. And amazingly, the remaining 12% said good decisions were very rare. Second, a recent study by the Business Objects magazine showed that 93% of US managers had not had any formal training in decision making. No doubt you'll say that your success is proof that you make good decisions. It's the other guy who needs training. It's natural to think that judgment, experience, intuition, logic, common sense, etc. is the way to go. Because in the good old days, this is how great leaders went about their business. Of course, you don't hear of the sob stories and the fiascos. For example, TWA and Pan Am, the pioneers of air travel, are no more. Bad decisions at Kodak led to their bankruptcy. Billionaire Ross Perot admitted that two of his worst decisions were turning down early partnership opportunities in Microsoft and in Home Depot, each worth billions of dollars today. In 2008, Yahoo rejected a $44.6 billion bid from Microsoft. And then in 2017, when Yahoo was put up for sale, Verizon grabbed it for just $4.5 billion. When startup Netflix approached Blockbuster's CEO to partner with them, he laughed at the proposition. A few years later, Netflix forced the bankruptcy of Blockbuster. Coca-Cola, for example, invested millions of dollars in developing and launching new Coke. Yet they were forced to withdraw it in just 3 months after launch. These are just a few. There are hundreds more. Of course, hindsight is 20/20. It is easy to criticize those decisions in retrospect. I agree, no one can be expected to make the right decision all the time. However, if these unfortunate executives had approached these decisions with a little more curiosity, with an open mind, recognizing their own fallibility and limitations and the perils of the VUCA world, they might have seen the other side of the deal. Today's decision-making is further complicated by big data. Managers receive real-time data on manpower, sales, budget, cash flow, financing, inventory, supplies, transport, share prices, competitor mergers, currency fluctuations, geopolitical and regulatory issues, and much more. This is big data. Managers are forced to integrate massive amounts of data into the decision-making process. Today, you can have all the information you need and yet make suboptimal decisions. Why? Due to lack of training. And if you think you're in total control of your decisions, think again. Unbeknown to you, your decisions are being contaminated, if not manipulated. Subordinates impose constraints on what options are available to you. Some modify the environment to shape your decisions. Others actually manipulate your thought process with well-designed techniques.
Some of the more well-known decision-making biases are the loss aversion bias, the interest bias, the tribal or social bias, overconfidence bias, the pattern recognition bias, the introduction bias, the confirmation bias, and the recency bias. You must pay close attention to these.
How do we ensure we make good decisions? Well, everyone speaks of problem solving and decision making. I want to stress that problem solving is not decision making. Problem solving is identifying acceptable solutions, and decision making is selecting one to act upon. So let's keep them separate. Two of the most common types of decisions we face are multi-criteria decisions and single criterion decisions with uncertainties. When framing a problem, The assumptions you make reflect your understanding of the problem and what you consider to be relevant. These are the criteria that drive your decisions. But how relevant these criteria are is highly subjective. A common belief is that the more criteria you include, the better your decision will be. Not true. In fact, using a large number of criteria is counterproductive because it dilutes the impact of more significant criteria. Every decision or prediction you make is based on the likelihood of an event happening or when that event would occur. And the fact is, your data is X% correct and 100 minus X% wrong, always. Furthermore, when dealing with probabilities, one should consider the event probability and the impact probability. Beware, teams do not guarantee better or safe decisions. While groups and teams can provide specialized knowledge and know-how, history has shown that groups are often ineffective at making optimum decisions. Some may recall the disasters of NASA space shuttles, Challenger and Columbia. How could an eminent organization as NASA have failed so catastrophically? A panel concluded that in the more recent Columbia disaster, various committees had granted over 1,600 safety waivers. They were victims of groupthink. Since most decisions in the corporate world have to be approved by a high authority, your decisions must be defensible. It is difficult to defend a decision that has not been validated. The validation process explores the sensitivity of your decision to the assumptions and the data and the biases. Furthermore, you should not judge the quality of your decision by the outcome, because the outcome depends on the implementation as well. In spite of all my preaching, backed by 20 years of experience in this field, there are many who will insist there is no substitute for logic and intuition or gut decisions. Don't let your feelings hijack your behavior. Neurologically speaking, feelings and sensors first enter through the spinal cord and go through the limbic system where emotions are developed. It's only thereafter it reaches the frontal lobe where rational thinking takes place. Thus, you can see, we experience feelings before we can formulate a rational response. This is where intuition and logic collide. Yes, framing a problem correctly and modeling it is not an easy task. You have to decide when the outcome is serious enough to warrant modeling. I repeat, in today's world of big data and VUCA, you must reinforce your logic and intuition with analytical techniques.
Remember, leadership is top-down. However, most decisions are bottom-up because managers have to depend on subordinates and stakeholders to provide data, information, options, context, etc. So decision-making training is required across the board.
Too often we face conflicts in our personal and professional activities. There are many instances where employees have to negotiate with clients, customers, suppliers, and even with co-workers. Skillfully negotiated agreements will increase satisfaction, provide a calmer workplace, and help you and your team reach their business goals. Think for a moment. Anything you want or need is owned or controlled by someone else. And this someone will give you what you want if you would give him what he wants. Again, every interaction is a negotiation. Even when you make a phone call or send an email, you are negotiating because you're trying to get the other person to understand and accept your views. So to get something on your terms, you must be willing to negotiate and pay the price. Yes, the price has a price always. Typically it's about money, but not always. In some cases it might be emotions, energy, values, morals, health, stress, image, and even the loss of life. You see, everyone makes a living by selling something. It may be knowledge, product, services, ideas, time, or values. And this buy-sell process involves negotiating. Since people buy from people, a willing buyer and a willing seller must negotiate. Even when buying a fixed price item, you can negotiate time, terms, delivery, service, warranty, etc. I'm certain you feel you're a good negotiator as well. Yes, we can all negotiate to some degree. But don't confuse negotiating with price haggling or bargaining. Becoming a good negotiator takes learning and years of practice. Remember, a negotiation is not adversarial or confrontational. There are no winners or losers. It's a problem-solving process where each party would look across the table and regard the other party as a potential partner. Some of the false beliefs that surround negotiating are, a lawyer is a good negotiator. Not necessarily. Leave the negotiating to your agent, or the subject matter expert should negotiate. And even the supervisor is a better negotiator. Beware of all these false assumptions. What we normally refer to as a negotiation consists of two distinct phases. The strategy phase is where you develop the game plan, and the execution phase is where you play the game. So before you engage in a negotiation, you should try to get a good understanding of the environment. Are there more than two parties? Is a third party intervention likely? Is an agreement required? Are there linkage required? Is it one time or repetitive? All of these will have a significant impact on your negotiation. Now, there are some things you should never do when you negotiate. Never threaten or force your opponent into a corner. Never rush to show that he made a bad mistake. Never openly challenge him about his motives, even when they appear to be suspect. And never openly demonstrate your superiority. No matter how convincing the data, we're dealing with people. And a perceived humiliation will irritate anyone. Remember, you need to reach an agreement. And that takes two parties. You may win the data battle, but it is likely that you will lose the war, the deal itself. So here are a couple of indispensable rules. Rule number 1 is for buyers and sellers. As a buyer, you should not commit to buy till you negotiate. And as a seller, you should not negotiate without a commitment from the buyer. Rule number 2 is known as the PI rule because of the letters P and I. Separate people from issues and move away from positions to interests. Positions are what the disputants say they want in a negotiation. Interests are the underlying desires and concerns that motivate them. Consider this simple example. David and Tom were fighting over an orange, each demanding the whole orange. It appeared that they would have to settle for half an orange. But then a wise man asked why they wanted the orange. What was in it for each of them? It turned out that David wanted to make orange juice, while Tom wanted the skin to make marmalade. Neither had to settle for half an orange. Now in the real world, USA and China have the same position with regard to North Korea, which is to prevent North Korea from becoming a nuclear threat. But watch out, the two countries have different interests. Now that you have developed the strategy, it's time to play the game. Never underestimate your opponents. It is better to let them underestimate you and drop their guard. Subtly let them know that they cannot get a better deal from anyone. You are indeed their best option. There are many established negotiating tactics, far too many to cover here. Some of the more frequently used negotiating tactics are good cop, bad cop, high ball, low ball, threats and do, low cost, high value strategy, etc. There will be occasions when you cannot agree on an acceptable settlement and the negotiation has to be terminated. You must prepare yourself for such an outcome. Never start a negotiation without BATNA. Remember, you will not be able to pull back from an ultimatum. The negotiation will have to end. A trained negotiator knows that as long as there's a willing buyer and a willing seller, there's a good chance of reaching an acceptable agreement. When you negotiate, facts and figures are only a small part of the game plan. Strategy, emotions, personality, value, ego, timing, sequence, perceived power, the environment, body language, etc. play a much bigger role. If outcomes are critical, learn to be a skilled negotiator.
The negotiator's mantra. Every action is a decision and every interaction is a negotiation. In life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And remember, the price has a price always.
We train with an emphasis on the 3 M's, the message, the messenger, and the method. We have in-house workshops and public workshops on decision making and negotiating. Do let us know if we can help you. Thank you for watching.